Alright, hello citizens of the Nigelverse. It's Nigel once again, and this is going to be another movie review. Of course, if you remember a few months ago, actually, hey, more than that, at around last year or so, we read Romeo and Juliet on the channel for Nigel's Assessment Labyrinth. So if you missed any of those, go check those out. But in the meantime, Romeo and Juliet, a story so famous, so popular that that has had many of adaptations. If Rule 34 is what it is, and I'm pretty sure you know what Rule 34 is on the if you've been on the internet for a little bit, but if Rule 34 is what it is, then Rule 35 is pretty much, if it exists, there's an adaptation of it. And I wanted to, admittedly, I'm kind of late to the party in terms of this adaptation. This is an adaptation I want to do a little while ago, and I am pretty late too, but better late than never, I guess. So it's time to look at Romeo plus Juliet at the 1996 adaptation of the classic Romeo and Juliet story, and see how that did. Did it live up? Did it do a good job adapting the classic Shakespearean play? Let's find out. But as always, of course, I'm not a professional movie reviewer, analyst, or anything like that. Just a man who enjoys a good time, and I had a pretty good time for the most part watching this movie. This is probably definitely not the first adaptation, but possibly the most memorable for kind of good and not as good reasons, but we'll get into all that. So, of course, if you've seen this review before, you kind of already know how this works. If you haven't, I'm going to be talking about what I liked and disliked about the movie, as well as provide a little plot summary. And essentially, the plot summary is essentially the story of Romeo and Juliet, like adapting essentially the events of Romeo and Juliet. It's just modernized, and modernized. I mean, like modernized at least for the time. I'm so it's modernized in that regard, but otherwise it pretty much is like the same baseline for the Romeo and Juliet story. So, I'll quickly kind of, for the most part, go through the cliff notes, and expound upon it only when necessary. So of course it starts off showing. It actually starts off, funnily enough, with kind of like a blow by, essentially a trailer, if you will, for some of the things that you're gonna see in this movie. And I was looking through like the comments, because I usually go through like the YouTube comments for different scenes, see what other people think about the movie, say about the movie and stuff. And someone pointed out, and it's a really great point, it's not very often that a movie starts off with its own trailer, but that's essentially what this movie did. It kind of giving like a flash forward, if you will, a flash forward montage of sorts, or it's showing what's going to be going down in the movie. So, but then it shows the Montagues and the Capulets. It's now, well, of course, in the original story, the Montagues and the Capulets are two like very warring families, This movie takes that idea and goes all out with it, because they are essentially two large empires within their own city of Verona. Like they literally have like firefights and like blood battles and stuff like that. And so, showing like the strife between these two families is cranked up all the way to max, where they have their own businesses and everything. The Montagues and the Capulets essentially control the entire city of Verona, pretty much taking that. It was taking the idea of like the warring families and just going like this with it. Like it's impressive, but man, they go all out with the idea. So definitely giving on a grander scale. And even starts off showing the TV, and they do like the prologue in the form of like the news anchor talking about what's going on and stuff like that. And I think that's even before they get into like the trailer beats and stuff. But then and showing the two. Showing like the two warring families. And then the movie does start out essentially with a battle. Of course, there's in the original play it's more like a battle with like the swords and everything. But here is a shootout between the Montagues and the Capulets, including Benvolio and Tybalt. Hard to believe all this started over somebody biting their thumb at somebody. Kids, it's never bite your thumb at somebody, because this might happen. But nevertheless, so they battle it out, and Captain Prince, the chief of police. Which some of the names, because it's modernized, some of the names are changed around. Some of the names are given more like a modern flavor. Like here, Captain Prince is the chief of police here, or the Montagues and Capulets, they have first names, same as like County Paris. So giving it that modern flavor. But yeah, so Captain Prince, he's pretty upset, saying, no more fighting. The next violent outburst, like the next public violent outburst, there's gonna be some hell to pay. But then and Benvolio, who tries to find his cousin Romeo, and he finds him on the beach. Romeo's looking all sad and stuff. Benvolio's like, "Yeah, what's wrong, man?" And Romeo's telling him about this girl that, isn't really feeling him, and that, of course, being Rosaline and everything. But then they learn of a Capulet party, so the Montagues decide they're gonna attend the party. They meet up with Mercutio, who is Romeo's best friend, and it's implied. I think the implication was supposed to be that Mercutio was kind of a friend of both families and kind of in the middle, but he's definitely he definitely leans, and even to an extent in the original play, but especially here, he leans more towards the Montague, which makes sense. He's Romeo's best friend, but he definitely leans a lot more. It's a lot less evenly keeled. He leans a lot more towards the Montagues this time around, but yeah, Mercutio hits him into the party, gives him tickets, and gives Romeo a little tiny pill. I think you know where this is going. So Romeo takes it. It's essentially ecstasy, and Romeo, and things get really wild from there. So Romeo goes through the party. The party goes off and everything. It's a costume party. So that's how Romeo gets in disguise. He's dressed as a knight. Then Romeo is in the bathroom washing his face. That's when he meets up with Juliet. And so we do see Juliet earlier in the movie as well, getting ready for the party. But then they meet around the fish tank, and he gaze at each other through the water in the fish tank, and so they go from there in the fish tank, and again they fall in love, and we see Juliet had I believe we see Juliet had looking at the fish tank earlier, or observing the fishes earlier as well. But yeah, so they gather around the fish tank, looking at the beautiful fishes and everything, and they officially fall in love. Link up and kind of get a little handsy. They kind of get a little frisky, if you will. Of course, Juliet is divided. Her attention is divided between this guy she just met, and then also the nurse, her mom, and County Paris, who she slayed to be married to. They show County Paris, he's eligible bachelor type of thing, and a bachelor. I wonder if they should make a show out of that. Anyway, so Paris eligible bachelor, and so he's dancing with Juliet. He's getting in good with the Capulets, but then that's when he learns when Juliet meets up with her mom and Romeo sees this off in the distance. That's when he realizes, oh, she's a Capulet, and the nurse tells Juliet he's a Montague. So that's when they realize they are technically sworn enemies. Which, I mean, sure, yeah, but at the same time, Romeo, you pulled up to a Capulet party. You had probably perhaps a 50-50 shot of her being, she was either going to be a Capulet or not a Capulet. Hey, you had a 50-50 shot here, but nevertheless, so Romeo and Juliet pretty much fall in love with their sworn enemies. Of course, Montagues and Capulets. Tybalt's upset because Romeo crashed the party. Meanwhile, Sir Capulet's no, let it go. We'll let it go for now. We don't want to cause a public outburst, and it does make sense. And I probably should have mentioned this when I talked about it in the play, how there's also, of course, not wanting to make a scene at a party, but also kind of that warning from Captain Prince here that hey, we shouldn't you shouldn't you shouldn't like stoke the flames or anything, or else no more public battles, or else there's gonna be repercussions. So just let it go. Is what Sir Capulet tells Tybalt. Tybalt is not letting it go, as we'll see. So at first they're about to leave. The party, that being Romeo and company. Um, Romeo, he's like, hey, I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna visit her. Enemy or not hot, I am going to get with that girl. So he goes back towards Juliet, and he waits outside her balcony. She does her monologue. Romeo. They meet up. They spend even more time together. They were already spending a lot of time at the party, including them going up and down the elevator, all over each other and stuff like that in the party. And then they meet up here, her and same deal within the pool and everything, and they plan to. Romeo essentially, for the most part, proposes, saying, oh, let's get married and everything. Romeo, you sure that's a good idea for someone you just met? But which is kind of the crux of the party and everything. Not the party, the crux of the play that should be. He is, but we'll get to it obviously. But so Juliet's like, yeah, when you might meet up. Is like, we'll meet up at 9. We'll get married by Father Lawrence, not Friar Lawrence this time around, but Father Lawrence, and again more of that modernization. So Romeo shows up, talks to Father Lawrence, and Father Lawrence is like, you sure about that? Like he tells him all about. At first, Father Lawrence is like, oh, you're not into Rosalie anymore. And Romeo's like, nah, forget her. I found this new girl, and Father Lawrence is like, I don't know. Essentially, the equivalent of, I don't know. Like, are you sure you're not rushing it? But when he tells him that she's a Capulet, hey, Father Lawrence believes, maybe if I marry them and wed them, then it'll stop the strife between the two families. So he agrees. And eventually Juliet and he get married. In the meantime, Mercutio and Benvolio who are hanging out and everything, and Mercutio getting into his wits and stuff like that. Mercutio kind of in the play he kind of was in a way he was the friend of both families, and more specifically Romeo, but then also he was also the comic relief, so kind of playing into that, having his little having his antics and everything. And Tybalt shows up and causes trouble as well. Mercutio's not happy about it. Then Romeo shows up later after having just been married, and Romeo doesn't want to fight Tybalt. Tybalt wants Romeo. Like, that's why Tybalt's there. He wants Romeo. Romeo shows up. Tybalt tries to fight him. Romeo's like, no, I don't want to fight you. He because he's married to Juliet, he kind of considers Tybalt like family, kinsman, and essentially family. So Romeo's like, no, I don't want to fight you. Tybalt's having none of that though. So Mercutio's like, you know what? Screw this. I'm gonna fight anyway. And then and eventually Romeo tries to step in between and break it up, and then that's when Mercutio gets stabbed with the glass, and it is a pretty nasty gash. So that's when Mercutio gets mad at causing and speaks the plague on both the houses before he dies and everything, and things get really dramatic and emotional with the rain coming down on the beach and everything. So Mercutio is now deceased, which now I think about it, Mercutio essentially died because of the strife between them, but him trying to fight Tybalt, he kind of brought it on himself. But Romeo is very upset now that his best friend has died. So his response is to go after Tybalt and shoot him dead. Romeo chases him down, runs into his car, or crashes into him, shoots Tybalt, and Tybalt goes into the fountain. At least he didn't drop off the ledge like Tony Montana did. But so Tybalt's dead in the fountain. Romeo has killed Tybalt, and now he goes with Juliet, and Juliet gets word of Tybalt's death, and she's pretty upset about it. Then and Romeo shows up, and she pretty much like, hey, she goes from upset to doing like full 180 because at least Romeo's here, which was in the play as well. Also, they consummate their marriage, and the next day, hey, Juliet learns she's gonna be marrying that Paris guy. Oh, uh, so of course, Paris was there at the Capulet's house as Juliet was as grieving the death of her cousin, and their family was grieving, the death of their family, that being Tybalt. Well, but then that's when Paris agrees to marry Juliet. He tries to propose marriage, and Sir Capulet is all in. He's like, oh yeah, when you want to marry? Thursday? You want to do Thursday? Like, they scheduled this marriage slash wedding, like they scheduled a lunch day. Like Thursday, you want to marry Thursday? Are you free Thursday? Thursday, cool. All right, I'll meet you Thursday. So that's when they tell the news, and Juliet does not take it well. She's like, I don't want to marry him, and Sir Capulet gets really aggressive. They do a little fight and everything, and Juliet is almost essentially disowned by her parents. So Juliet then seeks out Father Lawrence, like, I don't want to marry this dude who she's technically already married, but they can't know that, obviously. But I don't want to marry this dude. Please give me something. I'd rather die than marry Paris. Jeez, tell us how you really feel, Juliet. I mean, I get the idea, but man, poor Paris. But yeah, so Father Lawrence gives her the potion, and essentially the potion that will make her seem that she's dead for 24 hours. So Juliet dies, is taken into the morgue, and so the letter here. So now, here's the tragic part, as if there wasn't enough tragedy already. Father Lawrence is gonna send, obviously, the letter to Romeo, telling the plan and everything, then but then the letter doesn't arrive in time. The mail, they try to get over there. Of course, Romeo has been banished at this point. He was instead of being killed, he was just banished. Captain Prince, cut him a break, and Romeo at first upset, but Father Lawrence talks him out of it, saying, "You better be glad you're not dead. Instead, you're just banished." So Romeo, is of course banished to Mantua, but. But the letter never arrives. Instead, Romeo's friend arrives for hers and lets him know that, hey, Juliet's dead. So Romeo is very upset, heads back to Verona to do something incredibly costly, if you know what I mean. But yeah, the letter never arrives, and Father Lawrence freaks out like, oh crap. Like the thing is, and it's supposed to be more modernized. There's that word again. You're gonna be hearing that word a lot. It's more modernized mailing system, similar to like USPS or like UPS, FedEx, stuff like that. It's called post haste, which waka waka. But yeah, so. The letter never arrives to Romeo, so Romeo has no idea. So he goes now, to Juliet's tomb, and when first he buys some poison from the apothecary, and he's greeted by a shotgun. And would you believe that's not the first time a character has been greeted by a shotgun at the door? Just ask Ace Ventura. But Romeo heads to the Romeo, of course, heads to the morgue, or the burial. Well, essentially, where Juliet is buried. I forget the exact name of it. I guess it's kind of like a morgue, or like a family vault, if you will. But he said there, where Juliet is, he sees her dead body. He drinks the poison. This time around, of course, in the play, Juliet wakes up after Romeo dies. This time around, Juliet wakes up as Romeo's finished drinking the poison. And wow, I'll talk about a low blow. So Juliet this time gets to watch Romeo die. So Juliet takes Romeo's gun and shoots herself in the head, and that's when everything's revealed. And Captain Prince, I should say, reprimands the two family. He's saying, look where all your fighting is gone. Now both your children, now both your pride and joys are dead. So the Montagues and the Cavaliers essentially, bury the hatchet, and of course the epilogue with the same news anchor lady as the movie goes out. So that was the movie. Now getting into what I liked and disliked. So starting with what I liked, like pretty much staying for the most part faithful to the source material, but giving it that modern flavor, at least modern for the time. And I think, and kind of a cool idea, showing like the progression of Romeo and Juliet, at whether they're in the party or by the pool and everything. Which Romeo, I've seen The Great Gatsby. You might want to stay away from that pool, but yeah. So Romeo, and speaking of which, let's talk about the actors. Romeo, of course, played by Leonardo DiCaprio. Juliet, played by Claire Danes. And so I think, and all the actors and everything, and Tybalt's portrayed by John Leguizamo. And so kind of a '90s cast in a lot of ways, and including Paul Rudd as County Paris, aka Dave Paris so. Yeah, so a cast, pretty interesting cast for the most part. It definitely, we'll get to it, but not a bad cast. And the thing is it's weird, and this is kind of admittedly a great. We'll get to that, but a lot of things we have to get to, but yeah, but liking giving it the modern flavor, kind of taking the idea of the warring families and like expanding it to where they take over the city of Verona, and Verona kind of more so was supposed to be influenced by like Los Angeles, that like beach culture and everything, which I think does help play into a lot of how the movie pans out. So them kind of playing around with that idea, I think, is pretty cool for the most part, and essentially unfolding the tale, but giving it those modern elements, whether it be with the party or instead of replacing like the swords and daggers and stuff like that with guns named like swords and daggers, including the long sword was like the big shotgun when Sir Montague who goes for his long sword, like give me my long sword, and he pulls down on the thing and attempts to grab the shotgun. So giving it that modern taste, like it is admittedly kind of cool. The gray area, and I think I'm gonna do the gray area before I get into what I didn't really like as much. The gray area being everything's modern except the dialogue. The dialogue is still in that old English, which is kind of a cool idea, but also kind of a weird juxtaposition. All this modern stuff going on, they got the modern cars, they got the guns, no longer the swords and everything, and they got parties and stuff like that. They got even fireworks and things like that. But they still talk in the old English, like still carrying the dialogue over the original from the original story, the source material. But it is a weird juxtaposition. Like you have all this modern stuff, but they're still talking in the old English. It is kind of goofy, and the movie is kind of goofy in that regard, and some other regards which we'll get to. But the movie, I think, realizes it's self-aware to where it realizes it and kind of plays around with the idea. So, that's why I think it's a gray area, because it's kind of weird and kind of goofy, but also kind of funny at the same time. As for what I didn't really like as much about the movie, there are some really weird camera cuts and stuff like that, which even just in the first battle alone has the Montagues and the Capulets bite the thumb and everything, and that whole scene, that first public spat, like the camera scenes going all over the place as they're like shooting at each other and stuff. Who directed this? Kevin Dunn? So kind of some weird cuts and everything of that. Otherwise, even from there, like the rest of the cons are kind of stuff that's kind of cons in like the original movie, that being like the they're star-crossed lovers, even though they know each other for the better part of a few days, and So like that. So some of the things that hey you probably didn't really like in the play is carried over to the movie. It's faithful in that regard, but it is admittedly kind of weird here. And there's even not even just the not even just some of the names change, but even some of like the family distinctions and as well. Hell, and it's here within the wiki, which I do have here for your reference and everything in case there's a. In case there are points I missed, there are a couple characters there's taken out, such as Friar John, and Gregory and Samson, and here's the excerpt. It says in the original Gregory and Samson are Capulets, but in the film they are Montague. Who's in the conversely Abram as Abra is shifted from the Montague to the Capulet family. Those changes, I think, I think thankfully they're minor enough characters. All those characters were in like those like opening parts, like the early parts, and didn't really play too much a factor in the later parts. So I think they are able to get away with that. But I don't know, some people may not have been and as receptive to that. And the movie, admittedly, in a lot of ways, does kind of scream '90s in a lot of its regard. Again, the movie is self-aware enough to play off of that, but it does scream '90s in a lot of regards. But otherwise, still a pretty fun movie, and it's faithful to the source material in a number of ways. It's faithful and unfaithful at the same time. Like faithful in like the dialogue and kind of the core message, kind of like that star-crossed lovers bit. But then also going into but then and also trying to make it more modernized while keeping the old English. It's and excuse me, and of course changing around some of the characters, including Paris, and that is something else I have to point out. Paris if he got very little in the original play, he got even less in the movie. Like in the original play, Paris kind of was just there. But then he is in the tomb with Juliet, showing he does at least have feelings for Juliet in to an extent, but then when he's killed by Romeo, he's like, open the tomb, lay me with Juliet, and so he is, but then here he gets almost none of that. He's not even in the tomb at the end. He's kind of just there, kind of just the bachelor, and kind of just hangs around the Capulets and is about to marry Juliet. And he's not necessarily evil. He's not necessarily a bad guy, but like him just kind of being there. He's essentially just there here, and I think that's kind of weird, but. Yeah, him getting very, very little, unfortunately, compared to what he got in the play. He still got pretty little in the play. There's most, if not all, the characters get about the same. Hey, Mercutio gets about the same. Romeo and Juliet obviously get about the same because they're, the main stars and everything. Benvolio gets about the same. Father, Sir and Lady Capulet, and then Sir and Lady Montague get about the same. And of course, similar to like the play, the Montagues aren't really as explored as much as like the Capulets or we don't really see as much from Romeo's family, and it's kind of the same in the movie. But then to see Paris get even less in this play, not in the play, in this movie, that does kind of suck. But nevertheless, that is going to do it for this movie. So, pretty interesting movie. I definitely recommend checking it out if you're curious. And yeah, but nevertheless, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please do me a favor: like, comment, subscribe, share with your friends, turn on post notifications. Every time I upload videos, you can see as soon as it drops. And let me know in the comments what your thoughts on the movie, my review of the movie. Did you like the movie? Did you like my review of the movie? Let me know. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you guys later. Peace.